improving the biopharmaceutical properties of cannabinoids in glioblastoma multiforme therapy with nanotechnology, a drug delivery perspective. And this is something I believe in wholeheartedly, Jason, so I thank you for pointing me this article. So I'll just read the abstract. Glioblastoma multiforme, if you don't know what that is, it's a very aggressive form of brain cancer. In fact, it's the brain cancer that Joe Biden's son, Beau Biden, died from. And this is the kind of cancer often that by the time you find out, it's often too late because it's just very, very aggressive and grows very quick. I'm sure Dr. T would agree. So glioblastoma multiforme, or GBM, is the most prevalent brain tumor in adults and is known for its rapid proliferation and infiltrative nature. Current therapeutic strategies, including surgical resection, followed by radio and chemotherapy. But still, they're hindered by GBM's biological characteristics and the physical chemical properties of chemotherapeutic drugs, leading to limited and poor prognosis. Cannabinoids have emerged as an anti-GBM agent, exhibiting anti-angiogenic, meaning that it inhibits the formation of new blood vessels that feed the tumor, anti-metastatic, which means that it keeps the tumors from metastasizing elsewhere in different tissues in the body, and anti-proliferative, so it just inhibits its proliferation, meaning that it just basically kills the cancer. And that's because cannabinoids are known to promote something called apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. However, their hydrophobicity and poor oral bioavailability pose significant challenges for the clinical applications. So we know how hydrophobic cannabinoids are, right? You ever try cleaning your bong out with water? It doesn't work too well, right? So not very water soluble, these cannabinoids are. So they're very hydrophobic, or what's often termed as hydrophilic, meaning that hydrophobic as opposed to being hydrophilic, which is something that likes water. The study evaluates the potential of nanocarriers in enhancing the solubility and target delivery of cannabinoids for GBM. You know, this is super exciting to me because my molecule, hexahydrocannabinolic acid, and the hydrogenated cannabinoids we tested in a glioblastoma multiforme model in mice showed that the mice had, in the control group, some of the mice actually succumbed to the tumors, so actually died from the tumors. In the group that were fed with cannabinoids, tumors were smaller, and the groups that were fed with the hydrogenated cannabinoids, the tumors were even smaller. So we did a little bit of work in this area, but as this review recognizes, these things are very hydrophobic, so they're difficult to get into water. So the idea about using a nanocarrier is kind of like a Trojan horse, right? So the nanocarrier would basically carry the cannabinoids across the blood-brain barrier and then bloom on the other side of the blood-brain barrier, so the particle would release its contents, and that way you can basically deliver these across the blood-brain barrier, which is a very hydrophobic kind of gateway. Not everything that's in the blood makes it into the brain, and that's a protective mechanism that's in the body to make sure that you don't get bad stuff in the brain. So the innovative combination of nanotechnology with cannabinoid-based treatments offers a promising strategy to improve therapeutic outcomes. We address the application of nanocarriers to deliver cannabinoids, which can enhance passage across the blood-brain barrier, again, like the Trojan horse, getting across the barrier. And studies demonstrated the potential of nanocarriers in improving the solubility, stability, and controlled release. That's a very important thing, because as the particle blooms, there's a period in which you're releasing this kind of like in a slow release form, so it impacts something called the pharmacokinetics, which is the profile of the drug and how long it's available to basically do its action. So studies demonstrate the potentials of nanocarrier. Oh, I just read that. Cannabinoids can exert their anti-tumor effects, including induction of apoptosis, which I previously mentioned, through ceramide and P8 regulated pathways. These are just biochemical pathways in the brain that cannabinoids act on, including immune responses. So these are very important biochemical pathways that are what the body's immune cells are sort of tuned to. The evidence found in this study supports potential of cannabinoid-based nanotechnologies in GBM therapeutic regimens as a strategy to enhance efficacy in patient outcomes. And this is just a review paper that reminds me of a paper that I read last year from 2023 that was entitled Exploring the Potential of Cannabinoid Nanodelivery Systems for Central Nervous System Orders, or CNS orders. So this is not just for glioblastoma multiforme, but potentially for traumatic brain injury like concussion, and even neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So yeah, very exciting research going on in this field, and I think very practical applications. Dr. T, it's always wonderful to say that, cannabinoids can do this, cannabinoids can do that, but really, when you're talking about cancer, sometimes you need a multi-pronged approach, and cannabinoids alone won't do it, or chemotherapy alone won't do it. But certainly, I think this kind of work here demonstrates that you can use sort of advances in nanocarriers and drug formulation to enhance the activity of cannabinoids, because we all know that they're not very bioavailable because they're not water soluble. But Dr. T, what do you think about this type of work in terms of developing a therapeutic treatment for CNS disorders, in particular GBM?
Well, thanks, Mark. This is great information. It's been around for a while. That's why it's a review. They're looking at all the studies, and many people use nanoemulsification now in the cannabis space. Yeah, that's the big problem with edibles, is their unpredictability, because they don't absorb through your gut very well, because they're fats, and our cells are mostly water. So fat oil doesn't mix with water very well, and so yeah, we have to do things like emulsification to make the medicine absorb better for whatever condition, whether this is GBM or this is arthritis or whatever you're using cannabis for. This is a good technique to make bioavailability similar. Interestingly, the companies in the cannabis space that are using this all the time are the beverage companies. They have, because they're putting the cannabinoids in water, they have to nano-emulsify them so that they stay in the water. And so, there's a mix of the adult use recreational world sort of championing technology that could also be helpful in the medical cannabis world.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because at the panel discussion yesterday at BizCon around the hemp-derived beverages, I asked Diana Eberlein, who's the one of the vice presidents at Source. Source is one of the companies that's providing the nanoemulsification for these drinks. And I specifically asked her, is the size matter, from the audience. But the point is what, and I think she brought up a really interesting point, Dr. T, which is that nanoparticles in general are somewhat of a bastard child with the FDA. That there's a whole different set of regulations if you're talking about a nanoparticle. She seemed to think that micro is better than nano. So micro is just the next sort of size up from nano. And so a microemulsion could still, be used in a cannabis beverage. And she claims to think that, again, microemulsions have better onset of activity than the nanoemulsions. But
really?
Yeah, I mean, It's interesting because I think her answer is a little based on a misconception, which is that there's things like inorganic mineral nanoparticles, and those can completely get through cell walls and do completely different things than much larger particles. But a nano emulsion is not really a particle. It is a particle in that it's an emulsified oil droplet that's just down to a very small scale. But the particle itself is defined by the lipid water interface, which immediately is denatured when it gets into fatty tissue. So I don't think it's the particle concern that she rose with the FDA, but I think it's an interesting perspective. So I don't know if people again in the recreational space want to say nano. They probably just want to say a emulsified product, and does size really matter? It perhaps does, but it could be a hot button issue to regulate.
I bet. So is nano smaller than micro, or is micro smaller than nano?
Yes. Nano is the next size down from micro, and then you have pico.
Got it.
So
Got it.
and then above micro is milli. And then, so you think of it like a milligram, a microgram, and a nanogram. Those are different by 3 decimal points.
Got it. I understand that. I understand decimal points very well, especially from scales.
But you get an A in today's chemistry class.
I love this, man. I love this. I get an A. Look at this, you guys, man. Put my name on the happy side of the chalkboard today. Any thought, Jenny Beth? You have anything you want to say on this?
This guy. Size matters.
Size matters. Jenny says size matters. Fair enough. And on that, we are going to roll into our first